My friends, hello. I often get messages from people saying they're tired of where they live, usually mentioning a European country. And they'll ask me, is it better to move to Texas, Canada, or New Zealand? Others tell me, don't you think we should live in Russia? And I get messages like this every day. So I'd like to tell you something. If you're asking the question in those terms or in that way, I can tell you right away. What's your immigration experience? It's nearly zero, no delay or problem. Not everyone has a life that's been marked by or placed, let's say, in the light or in the darkness. Immigration is an adventure not everyone experiences. My whole life has been defined by that. I'm not saying it's good, it's not. Honestly, I would have preferred to be born in a place where I would have fit in right away, where everything would have been good for me. And I wouldn't have had to waste, the word is chosen on purpose, I wouldn't have had to waste years of my life trying to fit in here and there, wasting years in Switzerland, France, and elsewhere, just trying to fit in and find my place. Our life isn't infinite, and the years we lose, especially when we're young, those are years that later on will make us fall behind compared to others in our class. Even though personally I managed to catch up, it was at the cost of very great effort. Now, the question of immigration will not always be framed in these terms. There are 2 points I'd like to draw your attention to. First, most countries aren't open to immigration. They're not waiting for you to arrive, okay? So very often when you immigrate, when you have to leave, you won't always go where you want to, but you'll go where you can. All right? There isn't. There's someone who tells me I'm going to go to Texas. How are you going to Texas? What do you think? You arrive in Texas and then what? What next? What's the plan? All right? You can always go there as a visitor. You'll be admitted as a visitor. The problem is once your visitor stay ends, in general, there's no way to convert that into a permit that allows you to live, work, and all that. So the majority of countries follow this rule. There are countries, for example, like New Zealand. Those are countries that scare me. Those are countries that terrify me. I wouldn't choose them as a place to escape to for anything. Australia and New Zealand are examples of such countries, fundamentally created by former convicts. And probably in their sensibility, in their history, they've kept a bit of a prison-like side. These are countries where if a crisis happens tomorrow, they can very easily tip into extremes that will turn them into totalitarian states. So totalitarianism, I'm scared by the totalitarianism in these countries, so I wouldn't choose them. Guys keep telling me they're going to Russia. I read the story of a guy who was married to a Russian woman living in Moscow. Every time he had to renew his residence permit, he had to leave Russia. He had to go abroad, pay for a very expensive trip, stop working, deal with paperwork, and then come back to Russia. He had to go to an office that was 100 kilometers outside of Moscow, which was only open at special hours, on special days. I'm going to say, my friends, Russia is a nightmare, immigration in this country. I'll add something else too. There are plenty of people who say, yes, me, for example, everyone wants to leave for their own reasons, but one of the reasons they say to themselves, me, for example, I live in France. There's too much immigration. I'm going to move to a country where there's less immigration, where there's no immigration. The issue is once you arrive in a country with no immigration, you'll see why that's the case. Because you yourself, by going to that country, you'll be an immigrant somewhere. And since these are countries that are closed to immigration, that's why there aren't any, you will face exactly the same restrictions as others would. And you'll see that these are countries that are not open at all. That means administratively already, but you'll also see in terms of work, socially, all of that, you'll be completely ostracized. And then you'll see that there really aren't many options. So those are things to consider even before thinking about countries. Most countries are not open to you. That's the first point. Another important point. I advise against immigrating when the situation is unstable. That is, immigration should be considered carefully. the return on investment. And you know that I always think in terms of that. All life projects, all investments, all professional projects or studies, I always place them, I always analyze them in terms of return on investment. It asks if what I'm doing is worth it. Otherwise, there's no reason to try. Immigration is an investment that will bring benefits when it brings its advantages. We're talking about a return over a 10-year horizon. We're being realistic. After 10 years, you can tell if immigrating was worth it. Now, here's the problem. You have a situation you don't like. Let's say in France or Belgium or wherever, your situation. You have a society that you think is degenerating. You have a country that you think is heading in the wrong direction. Or there's a democratic deficit. There's a collapse or a breakdown of public services, all that. So you say to yourself, I'll go somewhere else. All right. Now be careful if you go to another Western country. What makes you think that this Western country isn't on the same path as France, but it's just a few years behind? So you leave, for example, you leave France, you're going to go, I don't know, maybe to Spain, maybe to Italy. Okay, right? Welcome, bienvenue. How long? But how long? That means if you go to those countries, all right? I mean, stay in France. Because what's going to happen is that by the time you manage to turn things around, it'll take years to integrate into society, learn the language, build a new social network, establish financial and professional stability and all that. And then what are you going to realize? Realize that what you left behind in France is actually starting to happen in the country you chose. I'll give you an example. I went through it quickly, but it taught me something. At the time of what we call the health crisis here in this country, it was becoming absolutely unbearable. It was a nightmare. Every day, every single day, we were in a state of hysteria that seemed to have no end. What did I do at some point to preserve my physical and mental integrity and to protect my family and continue to have access to a life worthy of a human being, a human who can go out, who can walk as he pleases, who can simply have access to freedoms, basic fundamental freedoms? I decided to take my family and go to Zagreb in Croatia. I arrived in Croatia and actually it was good. Life went on normally. While here, all the stores were closed. We had shelves where they had put things, non-essential products, forbidden, all that. In Croatia, life was normal. But the taxi driver who took us from the airport right away, he told us, yes, we are very upset here in Croatia because the authorities aren't doing enough. So we talked to several people who told us the same thing. So we realized that the people wanted it, that the people wanted restrictions, that the people were looking at other countries and other people who had lost their fundamental freedoms. And they envied them and demanded that their own state do the same. And then we realized that, honestly, maybe it's not such a good idea. 15 days after we arrived, stores had closed. 3 weeks later, restaurants shut down. By the time we left after 3 months, a few days later, masks were even made mandatory in the streets. All right, so what I'm trying to say here, it's sped up, but it's a life lesson. It's a lesson that cost me a lot. But here, I'm sharing it with you. That way, you get to benefit from it for free by watching this video, which is also free. So the idea is that when you move somewhere because there's something you're dissatisfied with at home, or there are things that aren't right and you want to avoid them, be careful not to go to a country that's on the same path. That's going to end up like the country you left in 5, 6, or 8 years. All right? Because by the time you manage to settle in and make the effort to immigrate and feel comfortable in the host society, it has already become like the society you left, and then you start wondering if you made the right decision to leave. If all those years of your life, all those sacrifices, those expenses, all that stuff were really worth it. All right? It's like me when I was in Zagreb and I saw that we had joined the United Kingdom. So I had the same problems I left behind in the United Kingdom were already there. In Zagreb or Croatian society, they were starting to intensify. I had disgusting food, people who weren't particularly open or friendly or anything like that. And I was thinking, what am I even doing here after all, okay? Add to that the constant earthquakes. You're leaving a familiar country and entering an unknown one, so new dangers await you. At that moment, I told myself maybe I should go back home. I returned to the United Kingdom, but it cost me 3 months. Be careful, it could cost you 10 years. Thank you, my friends, for listening to this video until now, and I'll see you in the next one. See you very soon.